You're listening to Mom and Doc Talk, where we talk all things healing pans and pandas with an emphasis on homeopathy.
Hi, I'm Jody the mom.
And I'm Dr. Barr the doc, and this is Mom and Doc Talk, where we talk all things healing pans and pandas with a special emphasis on homeopathy. And we have another mom-heavy episode today where we're going to talk a lot about handling holidays and overstimulation in general, because holidays is a time for overstimulation, but it's not the only time that we have overstimulation. And I know we'll also dive into how homeopathy has made that more effective and the ways that homeopathy can really be beneficial. But Jody, let's talk first about the way, like pre-homeopathy, like early stages of PANDAS, what holidays and very stimulating environments were like.
I'm not a bah humbug type person, but man, I hated holidays. I hated, and I'll even go further to say, like, I hated anything outside my house. But holidays were like a megaphone to interactions outside of the house. It was so difficult for so many reasons. It was like I was exhausted trying to stay one step ahead of like all of the management that went into all of the extra stuff, like, when we were in front of family, what Avery's behaviors, trying to keep those at bay and do everything I can and to avoid what could potentially happen. Even inside my house, it was hard. Any holiday that involved, especially Christmas, right? Christmas, birthdays, the expectations of what the holiday should be, is like, it like ruled our world. Like, I remember Avery, whenever she was at her worst, like planning for 3 or 4 months, this huge celebration for her half birthday. And it was going to be like this huge, like bigger than we ever do birthdays. And then it didn't happen the exact way. We didn't celebrate her half birthday, and we did celebrate it just to go along with it, but it was just this huge letdown. And then same thing, the expectations of Christmas, building up to Christmas, and then the letdowns. And then there was the food holidays, which is like every holiday, especially the sugar holidays. So incredibly difficult. One of Avery's things, I know we'll talk about it inside and outside of holidays, but is just overstimulation, right? Like, we spend weeks and weeks and weeks just like really preparing and really figuring out whatever this holiday or birthday or whatever it is, so like the amount of energy she would put into that. And then Christmas rolls around, like the night before Christmas morning, going to family, like all of that was so overstimulating to her. Mm-hmm. So it was like management kicked up like 10 notches, because there was more behaviors, there was more, it was like PANDAS was so much harder when she was overstimulated around the holidays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've heard me say this a lot, and I don't know if I said it on this podcast yet, but I stopped after a while seeing kids who have PANDAS as kids who are sick. And I started seeing them more as kids who are sensitive. Like, yes, there is pathology that's going on underneath everything, but the reality is it's stuff that we are, I think, all really susceptible to. They're just substantially more susceptible to it, right? And like the reality is that things that are not good for PANDAS kids in small amounts are not good for anybody in large amounts, right? So everybody, even the most extroverted extrovert that ever extroverted, is going to reach a point where they've had too much stimulation, right? Yeah. And too much sugar for anybody is not great. It impacts our immune function. That's one reason we get so sick around the holidays, is because we tend to be eating poorly and like eating things that are like already taking a hit to our immune system at a time when there's more bugs that happen to thrive during those times as well. So the reality is that I think we need to be gentle and kind with PANS families and PANS kids, that these are things that tend to be opportunities for all of us to not thrive, right?
Yeah.
And more so for PANS kids. Obviously, homeopathy can help with the aspects of PANS that are their hypersensitivity to things, and like not being able to handle even a small amount of something that most, like the average typical person, would be able to handle in like a bigger dose than kids. But I mean, what functioning parent, even without PANS child, comes home from a really big holiday family gathering and isn't really depleted, or have a birthday party and is just like, oh, and like, you know, dealing with all of the lead up, the people in your space and all the stuff that you have to do, and then all the cleanup and just all of the things. It's just, they're things that we just all sort of struggle with, and we just need to give a little bit more grace when we're dealing with a PANS kid or a PANS family. One of the things that we did in the Facebook group last year with the work of several PANS moms, we put together the 12 days of PANSmas, which was all of the tips and recommendations that families who are dealing with PANS on a regular basis would use to help them thrive and manage all the stuff with the holidays as best they could. And some of the things, there are some really great tips. So you can join the group and see those old posts and see what people shared. And we'll likely share them again this holiday season, just as a good reminder. But I mean, it was things like, be okay with bringing your own food. Be okay with saying no, that you don't have to go to all of the events that are happening. You know, giving yourself some grace and like setting boundaries to have better expectations, that kind of thing.
I think we will dive more into the family piece of it in a later episode, because that's a whole factor too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Were there any things that you really felt like you had to do to make him more tolerable, other than just like, suck it up, you dreaded it, you dealt with it, you moved through, it was hard, and you did it?
You know what's crazy is I just managed more, right?
Yeah.
I doubled up on trying to make it look like nothing was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of saying, and I have a super sweet, understanding, immediate family, but they didn't understand what was going on. But instead of saying, hey, this is a thing that you might see, like, you know, here's how you can help if it happens. I was just like doubling down on, you know, let me distract her. Let's do this. Like, here's 47 different things I brought with us just in case this thing or that thing or that thing happens, like things that I can use to distract. And I did not like holidays for a while, because I'm an overstimulated, I'm an easily overstimulated person myself.
Yeah.
Too.
So if we do nothing in this episode other than acknowledge and see you in that, when you are dealing with things that, you know, a quote unquote typical family can do, and that your family struggles with, I'm happy. If that's all, if you feel seen or you feel heard, and like realize you are not the only one who is dealing with birthday parties being something you dread instead of looking forward to, and being worried about all of the things that could possibly go wrong, and all the things that are going to be slipped to your kid, that is like the foods, like we talked about in a previous episode, like food sensitivities and all that sort of thing, that they're going to just, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine. Or like we talked about in another episode about how kids can hold it together at school and things like that, and that they show up when they're more comfortable, that you know, you might be approached by your family member who hears what's going on and that you've talked to about it, and then they see them, and then maybe your kid can actually hold it together in those situations because they're still able to. And then like you just feel gaslighted because you're like, I realize you see a kid who's behaving perfectly fine. This is not what it normally is. This is like atypical. So tell us a little bit more about how things shifted for you then once you brought homeopathy into the picture.
So I think that like acknowledging what it like the really just kind of the overstimulation in general that was kind of, I think, always there with Avery. I was looking at a picture of her from back before PANS the other day, and we were at this like indoor activity center that has all of the things. And I remember so clearly having this conversation with my husband being like, I don't know what happens to her whenever we come into loud places or places with the flashing lights or lots of people. Like, it's like she turns into another kid. And this wasn't like pan symptoms. This was just like she kind of went bonkers.
Yeah.
And it was just behaving really outside of herself. And so Avery was always kind of like that. And so going into homeopathy, that overstimulation obviously was still happening, but it came along with other symptoms like, it would have anxiety or OCD or something attached to it during the PANS days. And then we started homeopathy, and I feel like that it waxed and waned just like most of the symptoms did, and it would get better for a while and then get worse. I feel like Avery came out the other side, in general, a more chilled out kid. And now, she's able to go into spaces that would have way overstimulated and be all right now.
Yeah.
And again, like saying this is something that I'm healing. It's really neat to me whenever Avery heals from something, so I can talk about it, but then also whenever I feel it in my own body, and I know what it's like to be super overstimulated to where like it's almost an anxious feeling inside, to, I hit a while where that's really good. And that feeling of like overstimulation, like crazy, goes away, and it feels so much better.
Yeah. So I think it's important when we're talking about like sensitivity to our surroundings to acknowledge that we just all have varying degrees that we're sensitive. Like we like I said, the most extroverted extrovert who ever extroverted is going to have their own limits. But they're always going to have higher limits than the most introverted introvert who ever introverted, right? And then even if you're an extrovert, but you happen to be a highly sensitive extrovert, you are going to have less of a tolerance for things in your surroundings than somebody else who is also an extrovert. So the reality is homeopathy is not going to change what your baseline settings are. It's not going to turn you from an introvert into an extrovert. It's not going to turn you from a highly sensitive person into a low sensitivity person. So it's not going to change like your basic wiring, but it can help you have less suffering and a greater ability to access coping strategies when you can't just like remove yourself from a situation. And so one of the things that I've heard from a lot of parents is that early on, when you're dealing with like holidays and really like overstimulating circumstances that you can't avoid, like obviously, like you're not going to take a kiddo who's dealing with PANS. You're probably, I guess I shouldn't say won't, but probably not going to go take him to like Disneyland, where it's just like everything everywhere. Although Disneyland is actually probably one of the better places to go because they're so accommodating to people with divergence and special needs and everything. So of the places, that's probably one of the better places to go. That said, like even that can still just be a lot, because there's just so much going on and all the foods and whatever that are like so enticing. So you're probably early on going to be less willing or choosing to put yourself in situations you don't have to be in. And then over time, you'll find that you can go and do those things and things that normally would have been problematic or are less problematic. But that the things that you can't opt out of, or that you just really don't want to opt out of, that you have to give yourself buffers and you have to find your ways of like recovering and give yourself grace. And so like you don't schedule a holiday, a big holiday event, and then schedule another thing the next day. Like you plan that the next day is a recovery day and you're not going anywhere. Like it's a PJ's day, or whatever happens to be the best thing for you and how you recuperate. Or if you're somebody who's like, maybe you spent all day inside doing something. And so like the next day is just outside day. And like, you're just not going to do anything. Like if there's too many screens and like, okay, next day is like, we're going to go on a hike or whatever. And so having that plan for the recovery day tends to be really important. And we find that as you're improving and healing and like the sensitivity and like the overstimulation and just like all of the things that add up that lead to that spillover of symptoms, that the bucket has less and less in it, that we don't need as much of the back end recovery support and coping strategies that we needed before.
Yeah. I will say the good news is that we are back to enjoying holidays and everyone and experiencing holidays in a more, not normal is not the right word, in a happier, healthier way.
Yeah.
So,
you know, I think the holiday posts that we see in our Facebook group, and then just things that I share and hear from the clients that we work with and everything, they help remind me on the tougher times. Because I mean, the reality is like, you know, not to make this about me or other PANS providers, but being a PANS provider is also hard because we've got lots and lots and lots of kids that we're dealing with who all have PANS, and like, yeah, we don't have to go home and like be up with them all night, every night when they can't sleep and they've got, you know, we're crawling into our bed, so our sleep is terrible or anything like that. But we're probably up thinking about your kid and thinking about the ones who are struggling. And we've got a lot of them that we're dealing with to help recover. And so there are times when it can be challenging as a PANS provider to keep at it. You know, it's a hard condition to work with, and people are understandably under an incredible amount of distress. And the holidays can be so fraught because parents will say, I just need my kid to be better for this thing. And, you know, unfortunately with homeopathy, we can't guarantee a timeline. We can't guarantee how long anything is going to take. We don't know how long it's going to take for them to respond to a remedy. We don't know if it's the right remedy until we see how they respond. And so there's just a lot of things that are not within our control that we have to just rely on the evidence that we have in front of us, the information that we've got, the experience that we've got, and do our best. And then we have to just wait and see what the kid is and his or her body is going to do. But I will say that seeing the people who are making their way through it, and I remember that first time you shared with me on Christmas, you like, this is the first time, like, you at the end of your day, like, my kids are in bed now, we've had a great day, and this is my first Christmas that I didn't think about PANS until I realized I hadn't thought about it, and I had to share. And there's so many people who share just the victories that they have, and seeing those things where people are able to come back to like all the stuff that makes life so fun and so exciting and so worth living, the joyful moments, those big things that we can lean into again, and that we can really, again, celebrate and appreciate and have a good time. And I think that there's probably some value in having experienced PANS, because we probably also learn to understand and appreciate the smaller things and the smaller victories and the smaller joys as well. And maybe that's really where the magic is, right? Where you've got enough healing, but also have enough of your history that you maybe don't put so many expectations, because how many people suffer around the holidays anyway without PANS? So PANS can give you that ability to just be grateful with a smaller ta-da, but still have the kids able to get through it. Because like sometimes, I mean, let's be honest, when PANS is at its worst, even keeping something small at home just doesn't tend to go how anybody would want or how they would expect.
Gosh, that could be a whole, if I could figure out how to talk about the things that you gain from PANS, like the fruits of that hard and awful labor, like you were talking about the little, like, and you're right, like I look at holidays differently now. I look at everything differently. I wish there was a way that I could figure out how to talk about it. I'm not good at it though. Like PANS taught me so many, it's just, I don't think we go through this pain for naught, the struggle for naught. There's an unbelievable amount of things that you learn about the world, about yourself, about your child. I wish, like I said, I wish that could be an episode. I wish I could find words for it, but I don't really have words for it.
You will, and it will be an episode at some point. All right. For now, though, we're going to call it wraps for today for this episode. If there are things that you would like to share about your own experience, about how you've navigated holidays and other areas of overstimulation, we would love for you to join our Facebook group so that you can share and connect with the community. It's Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas. There will be a link in the show notes as always. And until next time, I hope everybody takes care.
We hope you found this episode helpful, hopeful, and inspiring. We try to get a new episode out every week. You can make sure you don't miss any by following us on Spotify or subscribing to our channel on YouTube. If you want to connect with us more, join our Facebook group, Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas, where we have exclusive weekly videos and answer your questions about, you guessed it, homeopathy for pans and pandas throughout the week. If you are already a member, give us a shout out and let us know what you thought about this episode. If you aren't on Facebook and would like to reach us, you can email us at podcast@resiliencenaturopathic.com. Until next time, take care and remember, this won't be forever.